Hello slot car fans. We're going to do a little tutorial here today. This is going to be some really basic stuff, and a lot of you folks that have experience with electronics and all are going to probably find this super boring, but anybody who doesn't and is interested in swapping power supplies on their slot car set may find some good information here and some tips on how to do this really simply. So to start off here, I've got this Carrera power track. This is the current generation of Carrera power tracks, and if you've seen my previous videos on powering your track and all that stuff, you know I haven't really been a big fan of this one, and I ended up going with an earlier generation that I could modify because it used analog circuitry. This one actually uses some digital circuitry, and it's not easily modifiable for me anyway. Let's put it that way. I'm sure somebody could do it, but not me. But as I promised in one of my other videos, I am going to go ahead and figure out a way to use this. And my idea here is to actually use two of them. I want to be able to make it work as well as my other track does with the modified earlier generation power track. And I'm using two power supplies, and that power track has two inputs, one for each lane. So I can actually adjust the speed of the cars individually on each lane, and that's really handy. Lets you match cars with different performance levels if you want to, or set up a drone car to go around by itself, things like that. So if you've seen my previous videos, you know I've done a bunch of different things like that. But what we're going to do here is put this power supply onto, we're going to hook up a different power supply up to this Carrera track. And first we'll talk a little bit about the math, really simple math. First off, let me see if we can see that. The Carrera power supplies, they're rated at 14.8 volts at 700 milliamps. Now 700 milliamps is 0.7 amps. Those equal the same thing. So we know we got a 0.7 amps is the max this thing's going to be able to put out under load at 14.8 volts. Now the extra power supply that I've got here, I'm planning on installing. This one, whoops, let's get it right way. Okay, there we go. This one is rated at 9 volts to 24 volts. It's adjustable at 3 amps. So like I said, this one is only going to produce 0.7 amps under its load, and this one's got the ability to produce up to 3 amps when necessary. Now the thing you got to realize about this kind of stuff is that the amperage is only going to be delivered if the car or whatever track or whatever your load is actually accepting that much amperage. Higher amperage doesn't hurt anything, or should I say higher amperage from your supply doesn't hurt anything. Higher voltage most definitely can, but higher amperage from your supply is not going to bother anything. The motor's only going to pull what the motor can pull, and in the case we've seen with some of these little bitty Carrera power supplies, when one car crashes, often the other one gets a boost of power. So basically it gives me the impression that this is not really able to hold up its end of the load very well, and when both cars are going full throttle, it's maybe not producing the amperage like we would like. This thing's going to be able to do it. So now, we'll show you how it's done. So first off, for our tools, the things we're going to need for this, got a few tools here and materials. We've got a cheap little multimeter. If you don't know how to use a multimeter for this kind of stuff, you're going to learn in a few minutes. We've got some wire tools over here. You don't need all this stuff, but I've been messing with things like this for a while, so I've got a couple different kinds of cutters and a couple different kinds of wire strippers. And we've got a set of the little wire nuts. Just a little baggie, these tiny little wire nuts. These make it real handy. We're not going to have to solder or anything. We're just going to wire nut this stuff together. Alright. So our first step here is we need to check the polarity on the wiring. So I'm going to start with the Carrera power supply. And I'm going to cut this off with enough wire here, maybe about a foot, so that if I needed to cut it and redo it a time or two, that I'd be able to do so. Now, if you look at these wires really carefully, and I probably can't see it very well on this camera, one of them has the writing on it. The other one does not. There's a little bit of white writing on there. Also, one of these wires has kind of a ridge into the side of it, and the other one does not. So we can kind of tell which wire is which. That's a good thing. Now I'm going to double check this all the way down the length just to make sure that I'm not seeing things. But yeah, I feel pretty good about that. As long as I cut off enough here that I can see that writing, that'll be helpful too. So I think I'll cut it off right about here. Now step one, we're going to separate these two wires a little bit. I can hopefully I can do it with my hands. Otherwise you use little nippers and get in there. We're going to strip off a little bit of each of these wires. I'm going to strip off a pretty good amount so I can actually reach it easily, because I'm going to be just putting the meter on there by hand. Okay, so I got a pretty good bit stripped there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, so I've got my two stripped ends of the wire here coming from the Carrera power supply. And I'm going to plug this in now and turn it on. Now this is where you've got to be very careful. The power supply is going to try to give as much power as the load will take, as I was just mentioning about the amp draw. If these two wires touch each other, there's going to be no load across this thing, and it's going to deliver all the amps it can at one time, which means it's likely to blow up. Or burn up. You know, we're probably not going to have an explosion, but we could definitely have a fire. But I've got these stripped and kind of pulled apart. They're going to stay apart for me pretty well, I think. We're going to use this meter. And it's just a cheap little Radio Shack meter. I've had this thing since I was a kid. Well, maybe not quite that long. I think I've had a couple of them because the first one broke. But we're going to set this for voltage. Grab our leads here. Maybe I can stand this up over here where you guys can see it. Okay. So now I'm going to come over here with my wires. Please don't touch each other. And don't touch anything metal either. And I'm going to just hold these to my ends and see what kind of voltage I get over here. Alright, I'm getting negative 14.6. So that lets me know that I'm reverse polarity with the meter. So I'm going to swap these back around. Go over here and check it out. Now I got positive voltage, 14.68. So this one over here, that's the red wire, is also going to be my positive wire. So looking very carefully at this, I see the positive wire is the one that has that ridge on it, not the one that has the writing on it. And I'm going to try to double check that because we don't want to get this wrong. It will burn up the unit if I do. Okay, so once again, go ahead and do this twice. We're going to hook this over here, hook this over here. I've got 14.68 in positive direction. So, you guys help me remember this now. It's the wire that has the ridge on it that is the positive wire. So now we can prepare this other side. I just unplugged that one. I don't need to leave it plugged in. That's kind of dangerous. But now we're going to do the same thing with this end here. I'll strip off some wire. I'm using the plug-in now. I'm working on that one. And like I said, we want to remember it's the ridged wire, which is positive on this connector. Now we need to do the same kind of test with this computer power supply and see the polarity check the polarity of it so we can make sure to wire it up correctly. So let me get over here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just taking this stuff apart here and unraveling it. If I remember correctly, these things have kind of flimsy-ish wires inside, and not real flimsy, but flimsy enough they can be a pain. I don't have it plugged in now, obviously. You don't want to have it plugged in while you're working on it. Excuse me. Alright, this one hopefully will work. Yep, okay. Yeah, see, these wires in here are actually a little smaller than the ones from the Carrera power supply. That's surprising, considering this one is meant to deliver so much more amps, but that's the Chinese for you. Now, since one wire here is red and the other one's gray, chances are pretty good these are going to be, the red's going to be my positive and the gray is going to be the negative. But we're going to ensure ourselves of that before we connect things up. Okay, so now I've got my wires separated here. They're not going to touch each other. And I'm going to plug in the power supply and turn it on. Set it for a low voltage. About the lowest it's going to go is about 10 with no load on it according to this meter. And then we're going to do the same thing. We'll connect the red one over here to the red and hold it against that. And where's my black one? There we go. We'll connect this black one against here. And we are getting positive voltage, 9.99, which is actually the same exact thing that the voltage says. Well, no, it now says 9.92. 9.98 and 9.92. Well, either way, that's pretty doggone close. So we know red is our positive, as we expected. I'm going to turn this off and unplug it. Now all we got to do is wire these guys together. Since we know that our positive is the one that has the ridge in it, not the one with the writing. So we're going to take this to here. Now these wire nuts, they screw on clockwise. So if you twist these wires together in a clockwise direction before you try to put the wire nut on, it'll work a heck of a lot better. For some reason, whenever I twist wire, I end up twisting them together counterclockwise, but that doesn't work very well when you're using wire nuts. You want to try to get all your strands up in there too. You don't want to have any strands sticking out that can short out on anything. Get them all tightened up in there nice. And I'll probably fold this over too a little bit just so it's not so long and I've got a little bit extra width to stuff in there. We can turn off our meter now. Grab a couple wire nuts. And I'll tell you, I'm going to triple check this polarity. Well, where'd that thing go? I'm going to triple check this polarity here once again before I do it. I do have the ridged wire going here like I'm supposed to. And then you just twist these on. They basically just screw on these little wire nuts. And these are used in your house electrical circuitry for high amperage, so we're definitely not going to expect any problems from doing this with these little, toy electronics at a max of 3 amps. Alright, and basically that's it. Now we've got our Carrera connector wired up to our adjustable power supply. That's got a little more power than the Carrera one did. And we're going to be able to test this out. I'll show you how it goes here in a day or two when I get it hooked up to the track. And as I said, I plan on trying to figure out how to make this work with drones and such, just like I do with the modified power system. Alright guys, hope that there's somebody out there that was able to get something out of this, and I appreciate you watching.